Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. Big thank you to my patrons. We picked up a couple of new ones in the last week, so thank you so much to all of you for your support. In today's video, though, I'm going to be showing you what my absolute favorite whiskey-based cocktail of all time is. And I've had tons. There's a lot out there. There's the Sazerac, there's Old Fashions, there's Manhattans, there's just so many. Final Ward, lots of great choices. Paper Planes. I'll try to show a lot of these to you here on the channel, but I wanted to kick things off with my personal number one, my absolute favorite. And it's funny because my favorite kind of whiskey, I love all kinds of whiskey, but my favorite is bourbon. And it's actually not a bourbon-based cocktail. It's actually Scotch-based. So let's get to mixing, and I will show you how to make a penicillin. All right, so this cocktail was created by a famous Australian bartender, and I think it's an absolute banger of a recipe. It mixes some of my absolute favorite flavor profiles all into one drink. So let's start with the ingredients, everything that you're going to need to build this cocktail. First off, you're going to need the base booze for the drink is a blended Scotch whiskey. I like Monkey Shoulder. I think this is the best Scotch whiskey on the market right now for making cocktails, for mixing with. So not something that I ever drink neat or by itself. I have this bottle around specifically for the one purpose of making Scotch-based cocktails. So that's the first thing you're going to need, Monkey Shoulder. Next thing you're going to need is some fresh squeezed lemon juice. I just squeezed this about 15 minutes ago for the video, some fresh lemons. And you may actually save lemon for a garnish later if you're into garnishes, and we'll talk about that later in the video. The next thing you're going to need is ginger root. Very important. Is a essential part of the recipe. So ginger root, actually pretty affordable. Basically every grocery store has it. I usually don't get a big one. They usually have these big old chunky ones that look like, they're the size of a man's foot. But since this stuff doesn't last in the fridge for too long, I tend to buy them in smaller quantities because I'm not drinking 10 penicillins a week. Unless I've got company coming over and I'm making them for more people than just myself. A small piece will do just fine. Next up is honey syrup. So you can do 1-to-1 honey syrup. I do 2-to-1 honey syrup. So that's 2 parts honey, 1 part water. I render it down a little bit on the stovetop, let it all blend in. There's a couple reasons you do that. The first reason is because honey is a delicious ingredient in cocktails, but the problem is it's too viscous and it doesn't mix well. So you have to mix it with water and make a syrup out of it, because now that it's a syrup, it'll blend into the drink and mix just fine. No problems at all. It won't coat the side of the glass and not mix in with everything. So you want to dilute it a bit. Some recipes call for 1-to-1. I do 2-to-1 because it stays in the fridge a lot longer. It's more shelf stable. So if it's 1-to-1, it'll only last about a month. If you go 2-to-1, it'll generally last around 6 weeks to 2 months. So you just want to look at it, and when it starts to get really cloudy, then you know it's going bad. The last ingredient that we'll need is Laphroaig 10-year. Very smoky, peaty Scotch. And this is not a base ingredient in the cocktail. It's actually kind of part of the finish. So we'll get to that a little bit later. But those are all the ingredients that you're going to need. In terms of equipment, I've got a shaker tin. You can do Boston shaker, any kind of shaker. As long as it's a shaker, it'll work. A rocks glass, which you're going to want to throw into the freezer to start chilling it. You'll need a muddler, because we're going to be muddling the ginger root. I'll show you in a minute. And lastly, something to measure your pours with, a measuring cup, a measuring glass of some kind, or a jigger that has marks on the inside so you know how much you're getting with each measurement. All right, now that you know what you're gonna need, let's start building the cocktail. All right, so we're going to start off with the ginger root. Now, you don't have to peel the edges. I mean, it's all going to get filtered out. So as long as you just kind of rinsed it off and it's clean, you should be good to go. I slice off the end and set it aside. And then you've exposed the nice yellow fleshy part of the root. And then we're going to cut some medallions, almost like nickel-sized cuts here. And nickel size is really about the width you want them to be too. You don't want them to be too thick. Now, I'm actually going to cut around 4 to 5 of these. Most people go 3 to 4, but I love ginger, so I go a little bit heavier on the ginger root. So I'm going to go with 5 little medallions of ginger root. They're so cute. Okay, now that we've got our ginger root ready to go, we're just going to take these medallions that we cut up and put them straight into the shaker tin. And that's where the muddler comes into play. If you don't have a muddler, you can always put it in a wider based bowl and then use like a fork to mash it up. But we really just want to be releasing all the flavors and juices out of these ginger root medallions and let them really open up because they're both aromatic and flavorful. So just want to mash it up real good, but we're just trying to crush it basically and release those aromatics and those flavorful juices. All right, that's good to go. Now we're actually going to mix the whole cocktail right in on top of that ginger root, starting with the lemon juice. One basic rule for cocktail creation is that you always want to start with your cheapest ingredients. That way, if you mess up a measurement somewhere along the way, you didn't start with your expensive booze and have to throw the whole thing out. So like I said, this is fresh squeezed lemon juice, and we're going to go with 3/4 of an ounce right into the tin. Next up is our honey syrup, and it's going to be 3/4 of an ounce as well. Same thing. And lastly, we're going to go 2 full ounces of our monkey shoulder blended Scotch whiskey. Straight into the tin. Add ice. And now give it a good rigorous shake. You can tell it's done when the tin gets nice and frosty and it's kind of cold to the touch. Then you're going to get your rocks glass out of the freezer. And you're going to want to add an ice cube to it or two. I actually like to have my cocktails not get diluted very quickly. So I have a mold that makes me perfectly clear ice cubes. And you can get these very easily just on Amazon. Just search a directional freeze mold, and that'll give you perfectly clear ice cubes. The whole idea is that most ice cubes they freeze from the outside in, and it traps all that air in it. But we don't want the ice cube to melt very quickly. We want to enjoy our cocktail without watering it down while also keeping it cold. So if you use a directional freeze, it's insulated on all sides of the cube mold except for one. That way the cold air comes in on one side, shoves all the air out the other side as it freezes. And that's what gives you clear cubes. Now we're going to take our cocktail and double strain it right into our cup. And all that ginger root filters right out. Now there's one more step. You might be saying, hey, we never used that Laphroaig, that scotch. Let's do it now. So this is what is called a float. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put just 15 milliliters right on the top of the cocktail and let it sort of slowly drift down into it. So you don't want to just pour it in because that's not going to be a float. It's just going to sink right in. So nice and gentle on the pour. One thing that I like to do is actually use the back of a bar spoon and do it that way because then it'll evenly distribute the scotch across the whole cocktail instead of just dumping it all in one spot. 15 milliliters on the back of the bar spoon. Nice little float of Laphroaig. That's going to give us that real smoky vibe right on the top of the cocktail. It's going to slowly permeate through the whole thing. Now the traditional garnish for this cocktail is candied ginger, but I don't have any candied ginger on me. So I just took a lemon peel from the lemon that I juiced for this cocktail, twisted it around a toothpick. That's going to be my garnish right there on the top. And there you have a penicillin. And now I have the genuine pleasure of drinking it. Cheers. Oh, man. That drink never, ever gets old. It mixes some of my favorite flavor profiles in the world. You've got the citrus, that tart citrus in there, but it's balanced out by the sweetness of the honey and that medicinal quality of the ginger root, mixed in with the smokiness of the scotch in there as well. A delightful drink. That's how it earned its name, penicillin. Hey, do me a favor, mix up one of these and take a picture of it. And if you're in the Patreon group, post a picture of it there so I can see your cocktail that you've made. Let me know what you think about this cocktail if you've ever had it. There's actually a cocktail bar that just opened downtown Grand Rapids, close to me. I've already been there twice, and they've got a penicillin on the menu, so I had to try theirs out too. Just a wonderful drink. Thank you so much for watching the video today. If you enjoyed it, please leave a like in the video and a comment so that I know and the YouTube algorithm can say, hey, I think people might like this stuff. Thanks again to my patrons for all of your support. May you live richly and get better with age. Cheers, friends.